My front door shook under a hard knock, and for a second I thought the wind had finally decided to tear my townhouse apart. The power had been out for less than 10 minutes, but the darkness already felt like a living thing. Outside, the February blizzard screamed through Minneapolis like it was angry at the whole city. Inside, my breath was starting to show. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to cross the living room. The house felt unfamiliar without the soft hum of the furnace. The silence had teeth. Another knock came, faster this time. Urgent, like whoever it was did not have time to be polite. When I opened the door, the cold hit my face like a slap. Maya stood on my porch, bundled in a winter coat with snow dusting her shoulders and lashes. One gloved hand held a small flashlight. The other clutched a duffel bag strap like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Her cheeks were bright red from the wind, and her eyes were wide in a way I had never seen before. "Ryan," she said, voice tight and shaking. "My furnace stopped working. The pilot light went out and I cannot get it restarted. My place is freezing." For a moment my mind tried to treat the problem like my job, a list, a fix, a plan, but the look on her face shut all that down. She was scared, and she had come here because she trusted me more than she trusted the storm. I stepped back without thinking. "Come in, now." She moved quickly, almost stumbling as she crossed my threshold. I shut the door against the wind and slid the lock into place. The house was dark, except for the candle I had already lit, and the faint glow from my phone. I guided her toward the living room, while she rubbed her arms like she was trying to wake her skin back up. I had stocked up like an anxious scout. Canned food, batteries, water, firewood. For the fireplace I used mostly as decoration. I had always thought I would ride this storm out alone, the way I did most things. But now Maya was here, and the whole night had changed. "Sit," I told her, pointing to the couch. She sank down and let the duffel bag drop beside her. Her gloves came off with clumsy fingers. I went to the closet, grabbed 2 thick blankets and draped them over her shoulders. Then I poured hot water into a mug from the kettle I had warmed near the fireplace. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. It was a small touch, but I felt it in my chest, like a sound in a quiet room. "Thank you," she whispered, holding the mug with both hands. The living room was cold, but I started the fireplace anyway, crouching close and feeding it small pieces of wood until the flame caught. The fire took its time. The storm outside did not. Maya watched me with a kind of still focus, like she was trying to memorize how safety looked. When the fire finally grew steady, I sat on the other end of the couch, not too close, not too far, a careful distance that matched the way we had lived as neighbors for a year. We had always been friendly, but never close. We waved while checking mail. We talked about snow and groceries and work, the safe topics. She was a remote data analyst for a California startup. I was a software developer downtown for a healthcare company. We both had jobs that looked stable on paper, the kind of jobs that let you avoid the messier parts of life if you wanted to. And I wanted to. I had learned how to keep things simple, predictable, contained. 3 years ago, I dated a woman named Rachel for 8 months. When she ended it, she told me I was emotionally unavailable. She said I treated love like debugging code, always hunting for what was broken instead of being present. She was right, and I hated that she was right, so I built my walls higher. Maya took a slow breath and stared into the fire. "I did not know what else to do," she said quietly. "Everyone else on the street either evacuated or is not answering." "You did the right thing," I said. "You should not be alone in that cold." She glanced at me, and the flicker of the fire made her eyes look even darker. "You were ready for this." "I grew up in northern Wisconsin," I said. "We lost power a lot. My parents treated it like a weird kind of family camping." Maya let out a small laugh, like the idea was unfamiliar but comforting. "I am from San Diego," she said. "I have lived here 5 years, and I still think Minnesota winters are trying to punish me personally." I smiled before I could stop myself. "You made it across the street in a blizzard. That counts for something." Her smile came back, and it changed her whole face. Not flashy, not forced, just real. It warmed the room more than the fire did. We talked while the storm threw itself at the windows. Maya told me how she had been on a work call when the power went out, how she tried everything she could find online to restart her furnace, how her hands were shaking too much to keep the lighter steady. I kept telling myself I could handle it, she admitted. Then it got colder and darker and I felt stupid for even trying. Pride can feel like strength, I said, until it starts to cost you. She nodded, and her gaze dropped to the blanket around her shoulders. I almost stayed there and froze, just so I would not look weak. You would not have looked weak, I said. You would have looked human. Maya went quiet again. The fire cracked and settled. Outside, the wind kept howling like it was furious we were warm. After a while, I said, for however long this storm lasts, we are a team. She looked up. Something shifted in her expression, like she had not expected anyone to offer her that without a price. Deal? She said. We found a rhythm. I showed her how to bank the fire so it would last. We heated soup in a pot close to the coals. We ate sitting on the floor, backs against the couch, like we were kids pretending the world outside did not exist. In the soft firelight, Maya's oversized cardigan was gone, replaced by her coat loosened at the collar. Her hair had fallen out of its tie and rested on her shoulders. She kept pushing it back, and every time she did, I noticed her hands. Long fingers. Careful movements. A woman who did a lot on her own. Can I ask you something? She said after we ate. Sure. Why did you help me so fast? She asked. We barely know each other. I thought about it. The honest answer came first. Because you knocked. She tilted her head. That is it? Quote, that is not a small thing, I said. A lot of people would rather suffer quietly than ask for help. I know I would. Her eyes held mine for a long beat. So you were lonely too, she said, not as a guess, as a fact. The question hit me harder than the wind outside. I started to deny it out of habit, but the firelight made the room feel too honest for lies. Sometimes, I admitted. Maya swallowed and stared into the flames. All the time, she said, so softly I almost missed it. I tell myself I am too busy. That work is enough. But nights like this, before the power went out, I was alone in my kitchen, eating leftovers and watching other people's lives on my phone. I kept thinking, is this it? Quote, I did not know what to say because every word felt too small, so I stayed quiet and I let her be heard. She hugged the blanket tighter. You know what the worst part is? She asked. What? I look out my window and I see couples doing normal things, she said, bringing groceries in together, laughing on their porch, shoveling snow side by side, like it is annoying, but it is also something they share. She glanced at me and her eyes looked wet but steady. And I think I wish someone loved me like that. The words landed in the space between us and made the air feel different, heavier, electric, like the room had leaned in to listen. I could have said something safe, something neighborly, something that kept the distance exactly where it was. Instead, my body moved before my fear could stop it. I shifted closer on the floor until my shoulder brushed hers, and I felt her breath catch. The fire popped, sending a tiny shower of sparks up the chimney. Maya did not pull away. She stayed still, but her whole posture changed, like she was waiting to see what I would do next. I turned my head slightly, close enough to smell her shampoo under the cold and smoke. Maya, I said, voice low, you do not have to wish for it like it is impossible. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and searching, and in that moment I knew this storm was not the only thing that could change our lives tonight. Then the wind slammed something hard against the side of the house, and the sudden crash made Maya flinch, breaking the spell. She looked toward the window, then back at me, and her voice came out as a whisper. Ryan, she said, what if this is a mistake? I opened my mouth to answer, but outside, the blizzard roared like it was daring me to be brave. Maya's question hung in the air, like the cold trying to creep back in. What if this is a mistake? Her voice was soft, but it carried all the fear people hide when they have been disappointed before. Another heavy gust hit the house, and the windows rattled like they were warning us. The storm was still in control out there. In here, it was just the two of us, the fire, and the truth we had been avoiding. I turned toward her fully, still close enough that our shoulders touched. A mistake would be pretending we did not feel what we just felt, I said. Her eyes stayed on mine. But we are neighbors, she said, like the word itself was a fence. If this goes wrong, I still have to see you. I nodded. That is fair. Quote. Maya looked down at her hands wrapped in the blanket. I have been wrong before, she admitted. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I kept my life organized enough, I would not need anyone. And then I moved here and realized you can have a full schedule and still feel empty. Her honesty pulled something out of me, the part one usually locked away and ignored. I had someone, I said. Rachel. She told me I was emotionally unavailable. She said I treated love like a problem to solve. And when she left, I decided I was safer alone. Maya's head lifted. Do you still believe that? I stared into the fire for a second, watching the flames twist around the wood. I believed it, I said, until you knocked on my door. The words came out before I could overthink them. That was new for me. I noticed Maya's throat move as she swallowed, like she was holding back something big. You made it easy to knock, she said. You always wave, you always help people. I see you. I looked at her. You see me? She nodded. From my window, I see you shovel Mrs. Kim's sidewalk after you do yours. I see you bring packages to the right porch. I saw you help a teenager jumpstart his car last month. You did not even make a big deal about it. Heat rushed to my face. I had not realized she paid attention. I had not realized I wanted her to. I noticed things too, I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. I saw you helping Mrs. Kim with her phone, I said. I saw you organize that street cleanup in the fall. And you left cookies for the mail carrier around the holidays. You act like you are alone, but you still do kind things like you are hoping someone will notice. Maya's eyes softened. Maybe I am hoping, she admitted. The fire crackled, and for the first time in a long time I felt calm. Not because the storm was getting better, but because I was not facing it alone. Maya shifted slightly, her knee brushing mine. It was a small movement, but it sent a clear message. She was still here. She had not pulled away. I did not mean to put all that on you, she said. The wishing. It just came out. I am glad it did, I said. She studied my face like she was checking for sarcasm, for a joke, for anything that would make this less real. When she found none, she let out a slow breath. I am scared, she said. So am I admitted. That surprised her. I could tell because her expression changed. You do not seem scared, she said. That is because I am good at looking fine, I said. But I have been living behind walls for so long that I forgot what it feels like when someone stands close enough to see over them. Maya's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to answer, but she did not. Instead, she reached up slowly and touched my wrist, right where my sleeve ended. Her fingers were warm from the fire. The touch was gentle, but it felt like a decision. I have not been close to someone in a long time, she said. My chest tightened. Neither have I. We held that moment for a few seconds, letting it settle. The storm still roared outside, but inside the room, everything was quiet. Maya's hand stayed on my wrist. I did not move away. I do not want to rush, she whispered. I do not either, I said, but I also do not want to pretend this is nothing. She nodded and her gaze dropped to my mouth for a fraction of a second. Then she looked away quickly, like she was embarrassed to be caught hoping. I stood up slowly and offered her my hand. Come closer to the fire, I said. It is warmer right here. She took my hand, and her fingers wrapped around mine like she belonged there. I guided her to the spot nearest the hearth where the heat gathered. We sat down again, closer now, our shoulders pressed together. Her head tilted toward me slightly, not resting on me yet, but not avoiding me either. Minutes passed. Then another problem hit us. The fire started to burn lower. I glanced at the stack of wood I had brought inside earlier. It was shrinking fast. I had planned supplies for one person, not two. We are going to need more wood, I said. Maya's eyes widened. In this weather? I have some in the garage, I said, but the path is probably buried. Maya sat up straighter. You cannot go out alone. I almost laughed. She said it like she knew me well enough to argue with me. It was new, and it did something to my heart. Then we go together, I said. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. Together. We layered up like we were preparing for a mission: coats, scarves, hats, gloves. I wrapped a scarf around Maya's neck, and my fingers brushed her jaw by accident. She froze, then relaxed when she realized it was only me. "You okay?" I asked. "I am okay," she said, but her eyes stayed on mine a moment longer than necessary. Outside, the cold hit us like a wall. Snow swirled so thick it felt like we were walking through white smoke. The wind screamed between the townhouses, pushing against us, testing our balance. Maya held onto my arm tight, and I held onto her with my free hand, guiding us step by step. The garage was only a short distance, but it felt like crossing a battlefield. When we finally made it, we leaned against the door for a second, breathing hard. "That was terrifying," Maya said. "You did great," I replied. She let out a shaky laugh. "I cannot believe I am doing this with you." Quote. I opened the garage and found the wood pile, then loaded as much as I could onto a tarp. Maya helped without complaining, her gloved hands gripping the edges. We dragged it back through the snow together, stumbling once, laughing breathlessly when we caught ourselves. When we got back inside, we slammed the door shut and ripped off our wet outer layers. Maya's cheeks were flushed again, but this time it was not just cold. Her eyes were bright, and she was smiling like she had just survived something that proved she was stronger than she thought. "We did it," she said, breathless. "We did it," I echoed. We stood there in the dim light, snow melting from our coats, our bodies closed because the warmth was the only comfort we had. Maya looked up at me, and I could see the same thought on her face that was in my head. This is the moment. This is the line. She lifted a hand slowly, then rested it against my chest, right over my heartbeat. Her palm felt warm even through my shirt. "It is going fast," she whispered. "My heart." I said before I could stop myself. Maya's lips curved, but her eyes turned serious. "Ryan," she said, "if we do this, I need to know you are not going to disappear behind your walls tomorrow." I swallowed. The fear was real, not fear of her. Fear of being seen and still being wanted. "I cannot promise I will be perfect," I said, "but I can promise I will not run." Maya's breath caught. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of her body. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then step closer," she said. I did. And right as my hand lifted to touch her face, a loud knock hit the front door again, sharp and urgent, cutting through the moment like a blade. The knock came again, loud enough to make Maya jump. My hand froze in the air inches from her face. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the door like it had personally offended me. Maya pulled her hand back from my chest, but she did not step away. Her eyes stayed on mine, wide and waiting. "Who would be out there?" she whispered. "In this storm," I said, already moving. "Nobody who is comfortable." Quote. I grabbed my phone for light and walked to the door. The air near the entry was colder, like the house was reminding me how thin our safety really was. I unlocked it and pulled it open. A gust of snow rushed in, and with it came a voice I recognized. "Ryan," Mrs. Kim called from the porch, sounding panicked. "I am so sorry." I did not know who else to go to. She lived 2 doors down. She was in her late 60s and always carried herself like she had everything under control. Tonight she looked small and frightened, bundled in a coat with her scarf half loose and snow stuck in the folds. "What happened?" I asked, stepping aside. "My husband is out of town," she said, breath shaking. My carbon monoxide alarm started beeping. I do not smell anything, but I do not know what to do. The power is out, and I am scared. My stomach tightened. Carbon monoxide was not something you guessed about. It was not something you waited on. "Come inside," I said immediately. "Stay warm. We will figure it out." She came in quickly, rubbing her hands together, eyes darting to the fireplace. Maya appeared behind me, wrapped in one of my blankets. Her hair was still damp from melted snow, and she looked like she had been pulled out of a dream and dropped into an emergency. "Mrs. Kim, it is okay," Maya said gently. "You are safe here." Mrs. Kim nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "Thank you, Maya," she said, then looked at me. "I did not want to bother you." "You are not bothering me," I said, firm. You did the right thing. I moved fast, the way I did at work when something important broke. I found the battery-powered radio and turned it on. The emergency channel was still going, repeating warnings about outages and dangerous conditions. I grabbed my phone and tried calling the non-emergency line, but the call would not connect. Maya watched me, then stepped closer. "What do we do?" she asked. "We do what we can," I said. "First, Mrs. Kim stays here. Second, we do not go into her house unless we are careful." Mrs. Kim wrung her hands. "My heater is off," she said. "Everything is off. I was sitting in the dark." Then the alarm started. I nodded, thinking, if the power was out, the alarm could be malfunctioning. Or it could be real. Either way, we could not ignore it. Maya touched my arm. "Do you have a flashlight?" she asked. "In the kitchen drawer," I said. She moved quickly, finding it like she had been in my house 100 times. When she came back, she held it out to me, and our fingers brushed again. The touch steadied me. "We should open windows in her house," Maya said. "Just in case." I nodded. "And we should turn off any gas appliances if they are on." Mrs. Kim's eyes filled. "I did not even think," she said. "I just heard the sound and got scared." "You did what you were supposed to do," I told her. "You got out." I looked at Maya. "You do not have to come," I said. Her eyebrows pulled together. "Yes, I do," she replied. "You promised. Together." The word together landed deep. I gave her a quick nod, and we both pulled our coats back on. Mrs. Kim stayed by the fire, wrapped in blankets, watching us with worried eyes. Outside, the storm was still brutal. The snow was higher now, drifting against doors and steps. The wind slapped our faces, and the world looked like it had been erased. Maya held my arm tight again. I kept my hand over hers, like a quiet promise. When we reached Mrs. Kim's porch, I could hear the faint chirp of the alarm through the door. It made my chest tighten more. I opened the door carefully, keeping my face turned away from any rush of air, and we stepped inside. Her house was colder than mine. The dark felt heavier in there, like the walls held fear. The alarm kept chirping, sharp and fast. "Windows," I said, and Maya moved without hesitation. She found the latch by feel and shoved the living room window open. Cold air poured in like a flood. I moved into the kitchen, using my phone light to check the stove. Everything looked off. I checked the small space heater she had near the couch. It was unplugged. The alarm continued. I found the detector in the hallway, blinking. I did not have a proper carbon monoxide tester. I did not have certainty, but I had one strong instinct. "This is not safe to stay in." I called to Maya. "I agree," she said, voice tight. "It is too risky." We opened a second window, then stepped back out onto the porch quickly. The cold hit us again, but it felt better than the unknown. "Back to my place," I said. Maya nodded, and we pushed through the snow again, getting to my door like it was a finish line. Inside, Mrs. Kim looked up immediately. "Is it bad?" she asked. "We cannot be sure," I said honestly, "but we are not taking chances. You're staying here until we can get help out there." Mrs. Kim's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya helped her settle on the couch, adjusting the blanket around her like she was family. Then she turned to me. "You handled that well," she said. I let out a long breath I did not realize I was holding. "I was scared," I admitted. Maya's gaze softened. "You did it anyway," she said. The hours crawled. The storm screamed. We kept the fire going, rotating wood, stretching what we had. Mrs. Kim dozed on and off, waking sometimes with a start when the wind slammed the house. Maya and I sat on the floor near the hearth, close enough that our knees touched. We spoke quietly, like we were afraid to disturb the fragile safety we had created. At some point, Mrs. Kim stirred and looked at us, a small smile on her face despite everything. "You two make a good team," she said sleepily, then drifted back off. Maya's cheeks turned pink in the firelight. She tucked hair behind her ear, then looked at the flames. "I was not kidding earlier," she said, "about wishing." I watched her, my heart beating too hard. "I know," I said. She swallowed. "When I saw you open the door for Mrs. Kim without hesitation, I thought it again," she said. I wish someone loved me like that. The way you show up. The way you do not make people feel like a burden." Her voice cracked on the last word. Something in me broke open, soft and painful and necessary. I remembered Rachel's face when she told me she felt alone even when I was right there. I remembered how I had promised myself I would never risk that again. But Maya was sitting beside me, honest and brave, and I realized the bigger risk was staying the same. I shifted closer, slowly, giving her the chance to pull back if she wanted. She did not. "I cannot go back to how I was," I said quietly. "I do not want to." Maya looked up at me, eyes shining. "Then do not," she whispered. I lifted my hand and touched her face, gentle, like I was afraid she might disappear. Her skin was warm. Her breath caught, and she leaned into my palm as if she had been waiting for it. "I do not know what tomorrow looks like," I said, voice low. "But I know what I want right now. I want you to feel loved, not wished for, not watched from a window. Real." Maya's lips trembled into a small smile. "Then step closer," she whispered again. I did. I kissed her softly at first, like asking permission. When she kissed me back, it was not rushed or desperate. It was steady, certain, like two people finally choosing the same door at the same time. When we pulled away, Maya rested her forehead against mine. "No more walls," she whispered. "No more walls," I repeated. Right then, the lights flickered once, twice, and came back on. The furnace kicked in with a heavy hum, and warm air started spilling through the vents like the house itself had exhaled. Maya blinked at the sudden brightness, then laughed, a real laugh that sounded like relief and disbelief mixed together. Mrs. Kim woke up with a startled gasp. "The power," she said. "It is back," I said, standing up. "I will call for help now." This time, the phone line connected. The non-emergency operator told me crews were already out, and they would send someone to check Mrs. Kim's house as soon as the roads were passable. Mrs. Kim's eyes filled again, but this time it was gratitude. "I do not know what I would have done without you," she said. "You knocked," I told her, and I meant it. When the call ended, the room felt different. The storm was still outside, but the worst of the fear had passed. Warmth returned, light returned, and something else had returned too, something I thought I had lost. Maya stood near the fireplace, her blanket still around her shoulders. She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. "So," she said, voice soft, "what happens now that the storm is ending?" I walked to her, slower this time, like I wanted to feel every step. "Now we do not pretend this was just a blizzard," I said. "We do not go back to waving from across the street like strangers." Maya's smile was small but sure. "Good," she said, "because I do not want to go back either." Mrs. Kim made a quiet sound behind us. "I am going to pretend I did not hear any of that," she said, with a teasing warmth that made us both laugh. Maya leaned into me, and I wrapped my arms around her, feeling how perfectly she fit there, like she had always belonged. Outside, the wind still howled, but in my living room, with the lights on and the furnace running, I realized something simple and huge. The storm did not create this. It only revealed it. Maya looked up at me and whispered, "I am really glad I knocked." I kissed her forehead. "I am really glad I opened the door." If you enjoyed this story, share where you are listening from in the comments and follow for more romantic stories like this.